So, Matthew 25, 14 through 30, page 1541. The parable of the talents. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with the 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. "Master," he said, "you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more." His master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." The man with the 2 talents also came. "Master," he said, "you have entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more." His master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Then the man who had received the 1 talent came. "Master," he said, "I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you." His master replied, "You wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned I would have received it back with interest. Take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." The parable of the talents is the third in a series of 4 parables about 2 different sorts of people who will have different fates when Jesus comes again. The first of these parables is at the end of chapter 24 and concerns whether a servant will be faithful or not while his master is away. After all, it's one thing to be faithful while your master is around and watching, but the ultimate test of faithfulness is not how you behave while your master or your boss is present, but how you behave when you're not being watched, or at least you don't think you are, which is not quite the same thing. Of course, the Lord is always watching, but let's be honest that we're not always aware of it. We're not always connected to that fact. That parable, like the one we're covering today, the first parable, has the context of the relationship between a master and his servants as the background for it. It may not be a relationship we're totally familiar with. Also, in both parables, the master leaves for an extended time and then returns. In the second parable in this series of 4, which is the parable of the 10 virgins, there are 10 bridesmaids who outwardly seem very similar, except that it eventually becomes clear that half of them are well prepared with oil for their lamps, and the other half are not prepared. and end up being left out of the celebration because they go out to buy oil at just the wrong time. The last of the parables in the last section of chapter 25 is the parable of the sheep and the goats. It speaks directly of Judgment Day and the peoples being gathered together and then separated into two groups, the righteous and the wicked. Our parable today is similar to the first parable in this group, in that a master goes on a journey and leaves something in the care of his servants while he's away. In the first parable, he leaves the servant the task of feeding his other servants. In this parable, he entrusts a large sum of money into the keeping of 3 servants. In the first parable, the servant's task it's clearly delineated. He has a specific job to take charge of the other servants to give them their food at the proper times. In this parable, the 3 servants are given a whole lot of money, and it's a lot of money, and no specific instructions about what to do with it, at least not that we're told about. Clearly, the master didn't want the servants to just sit on it and keep it safe. He wanted them to put it to work in some way and make it grow, though he didn't specify how to do that. It says in verse 16, the man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. Not that he necessarily gained 5 more right away, but he started right away. Though some translations say that the man traded with the money and made 5 more, the Greek text doesn't seem to be that specific about what the man did with the money to make it grow. We could be talking about some kind of financial investing, trading, which comes with risks, of course. Or we could be talking about starting some sort of business, which requires sweat equity and also comes with risk, especially if it's a restaurant. Or we could be talking about, maybe buying some farmland or some farm animals and the like. That would be pretty common in that time period and place. And that also requires a lot of sweat equity and certainly also has risk. You could have a drought. In other words, whatever way these servants chose to invest this money, there would be an element of risk involved, maybe a very significant risk. Making a profit was not guaranteed, and they're working with someone else's money, but it's been entrusted to them. They definitely could have lost money instead of doubling the money. Even putting the money on deposit with bankers would not be a guarantee of profit. After all, the FDIC is really quite a recent innovation. Banks go under sometimes, in the old days especially. So there are some things we can conclude about the master of these servants. Clearly, he wants the servants to invest this money in such a way as to bring an increase. He wants them to put it to good use. Clearly, he is aware that there is risk involved, and he's apparently okay with that. This master places a very high level of trust in these servants. After all, we're talking about a whole lot of money here. A talent is 6,000 days' wages for a common laborer. That is about 20 years of wages. That's a lot. If we go with a low round number of $100 as a daily wage for a common laborer, it seems kind of low. Then we're talking about $600,000 per talent. And 5 talents would be $3 million. So this master is really putting a lot of trust in his servants. Clearly, this master gives more responsibility to those who are proved faithful. For it says in verse 15 that he distributed the money to his servants, each according to his ability. Additionally, when the servant who started with 5 talents and the one who started with 2 bring to him their increase, he promises to put them in charge of even more responsibilities, saying in verse 21, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." So apparently $3 million was a few things, and he's going to put him in charge of many things. So what that amounts to, we don't know. Additionally, a master who says to his servants, "Come and share your master's happiness," he doesn't sound like a harsh taskmaster of a man who has this idea that, he is on this social status and those servants, they are, dirt under his feet. That's not the picture that we're getting here from what he's saying. Yes, he has high expectations and harshly judges the servant who was given $600,000 and could think of nothing to do with it but to bury it and wait for his master to return. But we are talking about a servant here who is actually supposed to be doing something with his time, something useful, rather than burying treasure. And he apparently did nothing to actually serve his master other than, hide what had been given to him. The other thing that we see about the master is, if we're really paying attention, it's that it doesn't appear that he actually takes back the money. Yes, he takes the money away from the one who buried the 1 talent and gives it to the other one. But he says in verse 28, take the talent from him, the guy who had the 1 talent, take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. He didn't say the one who had the 10 talents, like he took it back, the one who has them. That would certainly indicate that he did not take back the money from the servant with the 10 talents. Neither the principal nor the interest, the profits from it. And we're talking here about several $1 million in principal and millions in profits. Apparently, the master is not truly interested primarily in the profits that are being generated. What he's interested in is having faithful and diligent servants. He cares more about that than the money. Really, if the servants have already proven that they have what it takes to double his money, well, he may as well let them continue doing so and continue doing what they're doing instead of taking the money away, unless he's got a more proven strategy for earning money. So the master in this parable is an interesting character. He has high expectations, but also a high level of trust in his servants, and he's not afraid of risk. He wants to know which servants are faithful and trustworthy and will give the good ones additional responsibilities. The master is more interested in faithful and trustworthy servants than in getting his money back. There are also some things that we find out about the servants. The difference between the first 2 servants and the last one isn't just a matter of what they did with the money. What they did with the money comes out of something inside them. we find out some things about what drove them. There's a difference in how they view the money that was entrusted to them. In verse 20, the first servant said, "Master, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more." So he understands that this money has been entrusted to him. He understands that it's not his, but in a sense, it's his to do something with. On the other hand, the last servant revealed something about how he thought about the money in verse 18, where it says that he hid his master's money. He didn't hide the money entrusted to him. He hid his master's money. And in verse 25 he said, "So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you." Notice that? The other guys are viewing it as what was entrusted to them. And this guy views it as his master's money, his talent, what belongs to him. He's not really getting it that this was entrusted to him. He's not taking ownership of what he's going to do with it. The last servant is very much in touch with the fact that this money doesn't belong to him, but the first 2 servants understand that the money was entrusted to them. So in a sense, they take ownership of it, not owning it, but owning what they're going to do with it. Another difference is that the first 2 servants understand the heart of their master and what he expects. They know that he wants them to put the money to work in some way, and therefore they also know that there will be some risk involved. They faithfully work at their task of bringing forth an increase from this investment. On the other hand, the third servant doesn't understand his master's heart at all and walks in fear. And I guess if he doesn't understand his master's heart at all, and he's been put in charge of $600,000, it's not surprising that he would walk in fear, right? In verses 24 through 25, he said, "Master, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you." So his master entrusted him with $600,000 or, something like that. And he accused his master of harvesting where he had not sown and gathering where he had not scattered seed. Well, that's pretty ridiculous considering the amount of seed money the master had given his servant. Like, what is this guy thinking? You haven't scattered seed? It looks like seed to me. The last servant didn't understand that the money was truly entrusted to him. He didn't understand that he was supposed to do something productive with it and not just bury it to keep it safe. He totally didn't understand his master's heart. He saw his master as a hard and unreasonable man, but that was not the experience of the other 2 servants at all. They found their master to be very trusting and very gracious, bountifully rewarding their faithfulness. So what has the Lord given to us? What has he graciously entrusted to us that we may put it to work and bring forth an increase? Has he maybe given us some money or some property or something like that? Has he given each of us spiritual gifts with which to build up the church? Has he given us maybe some natural talents or aptitude in certain areas? Has he given us grace to develop our skills at one thing or another, maybe a few things? Does he expect us to take a risk and put what he has given us to good and productive use for his kingdom? It's essential that we understand that every good and perfect gift comes from him. The talents and gifts and skills we have are a gift from our Heavenly Father, and not something we can proudly claim as our own. I'm good at music because I worked real hard. It was all me. I'm good, you know? Yes, we can and should put effort into developing what we've got. But we need to know that all good things come from him, not from ourselves. So we need to understand that the gifts we have were entrusted to us, and not get puffed up with pride over whatever we've got. On the other side, we need to understand that he has called us to take some risks and put our gifts to work, and not just bury what he has given us to keep it safe. He has truly entrusted these things to us. Yes, they are from him. You know, the gifts, the spiritual gifts, the talents, all that is from him. But he has given them to us to do something with them. In this, we need to understand our Father's heart. We need to understand that he is gracious and compassionate toward us. We need to understand that he truly does graciously give us good gifts of great value that are from him, that we may put them to productive use. Ultimately, he wants to give us what we need to be productive and fruitful. As we show ourselves to be faithful with what he's given us, he will entrust more to us when we're ready. If we don't show ourselves to be faithful with what we have already received, yes, he is still gracious and gives us many second chances and third and fourth chances and so on, but he will probably not entrust more to us until we have made productive use of what he has already given. We should not live in fear. That's not where it's at. He is calling us to not be afraid to take a risk and serve him. Maybe he'll call us to step out in faith and speak to someone. Maybe he'll call us to step up and serve some role in his kingdom. We need to not walk in fear, but to walk in confidence that if he's called us to it, he will be with us in it. He is calling us to not be afraid to use the gifts he's given us. But he's also calling us to understand that he is good and gracious and not to fear that he is hard. The last servant said, "I knew that you are a hard man." That servant truly didn't understand the heart of his master. The Lord is not hard on us. So do we need to feel condemned if we have gifts from the Lord that we may not be putting to use right now? No. In this, we need to also discern that there are seasons in our lives. There is a season to sow and a season to harvest what you've sown. And even in this parable, we're not told exactly how this works out time-wise. But in verse 16, it says, "The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more." So he went at once. He started right away. But how long did it take for the money to start earning a profit? We have no idea, you know. Sometimes the Lord gives us a gift that he wants us to do something with. Does that mean it's going to start happening and start doing something big right away? Not necessarily. You know, some things take time. It may take time to develop. And I think, I didn't look back at this, but the Apostle Paul, when he came to faith, he kind of started preaching right away, got in a bit of trouble, and he stepped back for a bit and developed for a while, quite a while, before he really began his main preaching career, and was extremely fruitful in that. So there's a season to learn and grow, and there's a season to put what you've learned into practice. And you may have this gift, you may have that gift, you may have that gift. Is the season for each of them all at the same time? Not necessarily. So for instance, I have a variety of different gifts and skills. I play a variety of different musical instruments, including some that you probably don't even know about, that I probably haven't played for quite a while. When I lead worship alone, I play piano or organ and sing, and that's all I can really do. You know, you only got two hands, you only got one voice. There's only so much you can do at a time. When Kristen and I are working together, we have a lot more flexibility. We're still trying to figure out what to do with all that flexibility. You know, I could play piano or organ. While she's playing piano, I could sing melody or harmony. I could also play my recorders or penny whistles, or maybe even break out some other instruments. If the Lord has given me grace to learn to play the recorder and sing harmonies, though, you know, not at the same time, I've not been able to make use of those gifts for many, many years now, because there was only one of me. So I needed to play the piano or organ and sing melody all the time. You know, so I couldn't play the recorder, you know, at least here in church. Circumstances are changing, so now I can make use of gifts that have lain dormant. So there's a season for one thing, there's a season for another. Both are good, or at least I hope so. Over the years, there have been times when I have taught Bible study, and other times when I had no opportunity to do that, to teach. In 2021, I was feeling the itch to teach again, but I had no opportunity to do so. So I conceived of a plan to start a kayaking club that studies the Bible together along the way. You know, because everyone wants to do that, right? I put some work and even a little money into trying to start it, but it failed miserably, and no one joined the club. It's an inspiring story, isn't it? You never know, it might happen yet. But within a year, I found myself teaching again. Funny thing, that. And then preaching as well. Maybe my approach in trying to start a paddling club didn't work, or at least it hasn't yet. You never know. But the Lord was calling me to get back into teaching, and then the opportunity to do it opened up, and also to preach as well, which may have been more than I bargained for. But so it goes. But He has given me grace to develop some level of skill at that. What level of skill, I'm not really sure, but certainly more than I started with. So that's something. So be a faithful servant. Be a faithful steward of what the Lord has given you. Walk in confidence in the gifts that He gives you. And understand that there may be a time and a season for your gifts. It may take time. It may take time for it to start bearing fruit. You may work away at something for an extended period before you really see results. But would the Lord still say of you, "Well done, good and faithful servant," because you were faithful, not because you saw big results? And don't bury your gifts out of fear. The Lord wants to use what he's given you. Matthew 5:14-16 says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to the whole house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." Amen.